you're here and the only relationship you have with your relative in America is like, that's like a mobile bank. You want this, they send you. But do you care about their future? Do you care about their retirement? Do you care about their life after America? And unfortunately, they don't know how to confront their family members at home to tell them, hey, you know, I also have needs and all this. Because when they try to say that, then they're viewed as mean. I've been on both sides. And yes, there's a lot of wealth in America, but there's also a lot of poverty. And there's a lot of hardship, especially for foreigners. And so families need to understand and have some grace. Really, I don't know where to start this story, but I'm looking back at my recent story that I took you on my journey from childhood to where I am today. And I must say that your feedback from all over the world is what has brought me to this moment today. So what I was sharing, I believe, was a testimony of my life from childhood to hardship, to triumph, and to where I am today. And I believe that's probably one of the biggest reasons why God still has me here today. And I believe everybody has a reason why they're still here on earth today. To reach out, to share their story, to share an experience, to hold a hand up, to just hug somebody, just to help somebody, because if we can be there for one another, you will realize that everybody has something to give to the world. And I think if everybody opened up their lives and shared their experiences, the good, the bad, the in-betweens, I think the world would be a much better place. As any uncharted, you know, territories, when you're venturing into an uncharted territory, you're bound to encounter fears. Some that are valid, some that are imaginary. But there's one thing that I remember back in the day, Bishop T.D. Jakes was preaching a message, and there's something he said that has always resonated with me. He said, you can never conquer that which you're not willing to confront. And one of those for me has always been the fears, whether it's imaginary or it's real. The fears that stand in the way of us doing what we feel the push to do. Because when you're wanting to do something big, something you've never seen someone around you do, definitely you're bound to be afraid. For me to share this story, you know, we're in Africa, especially where we say we don't dare talk about family matters. We don't dare talk about even personal experiences that are embarrassing. So does that mean we're perfect people? We're not perfect people. We all make mistakes. We have all gone through experiences. But by the mere fact that we are afraid of how people will perceive us or what they might do, then we allow that to rob us of the power that God has given us. The book of 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but He's given us a spirit of power, of love, and a sound mind." Even my sharing was done out of love. Maybe it will liberate somebody, whether they were among the characters that violated me or not, whether they are among the characters or whether they are also victims of where they may have been violated also, especially when you're young or little or very vulnerable, when you're helpless, and those people that should protect you are the ones that mess you. That could have aborted. My life could have been aborted from the time I was 9 years old. But because God helped me and pulled me through that, and He brought me up to here, I just look back and I wonder, okay, God, what did you do all this for? And I cannot give God glory without sharing the story. I've forgiven those that have violated me. But the fact that you've forgiven somebody, that doesn't mean you don't share your story. That does not mean that you still held captive by how will they react? How will they take this? Because that was never in the forefront. I was conscious, and I'm conscious that yes, people may react differently, but you don't control what people would do. All I know is I've asked God for the grace, even over their lives. He's given us a spirit of power, Power triumphs over fear. But when you allow fear to control you, then you're giving up the power that God has given you. You're giving up that sound mind that God has given you. He's given us a sound mind. But if you sit with something bothering you that is pushing, it wants to come out. It's like somebody, a mother, when she's ready to deliver, she goes to the labor ward. You know, they cannot hold back when that baby is ready to come out. They're afraid, there is fear. That what if I rupture? There is fear. What if this baby doesn't make it? There is fear. What if I don't make it and I die at delivery? There is fear that even some of them, they don't even know who the fathers of these children are. There is fear or if they do know, but, you know, like I've seen, especially single mothers who have been afraid of, okay, is this baby, then what? Some fathers have run away from their babies when they're born. But all those fears cannot stop that which is on the inside of this woman. It must come out. And what happens? Whether the mother likes it or not, they must push. Because there is a push that is on the inside that that child must be delivered. It must be born. It must be birthed, right? Because the pregnancy has matured. And so it's time for it to come. So even for me, I feel like what I had been carrying, all the experiences, the wounds, the bruises, the hurts, the joys, the triumphs, you know, the victories, things, miracles that I still don't understand how I did things that I did. But all those together are a composition of what I had been carrying. And it got to a point where I felt like it's time for this baby to be born. And God knows what this baby will eat. And I had prayed for God to protect my baby, my story, myself. And those that I believe needed to hear this story. Of course, there must be some Cold War going on. Maybe people need to learn to, when people tell stories, because there are many people, you know, telling stories, and thank God for social media. Social media is a two-edged sword. Some people use it to break others and to ruin others, and that's why people will put names and photos of others and whatever, but others use it to build and to reconcile and to encourage and to inspire. And for me, the latter is my reason for doing this. I have seen so many people come back and to tell me, your story resonates so well with me. It sounds like you're telling my story. Oh my goodness, I know exactly what you're talking about. God has sent you to me. I don't know how this story came to my feed, but I'm so glad it came. I was at a point of giving up, but now after watching your story, I feel like I can go on. Others have come and said, I saw the story and it was so long and I thought I'm just gonna watch the first few minutes. The next thing, I'm watching part 2 and I'm watching part 3. I don't know how I'm still here. God bless you. So thank you so much for your feedback. Thank you so much for your encouraging words. And I had to become very vulnerable to tell my story. And the results and the feedback that I've received tells me there's so many of you that are waiting to tell your story, but you're too afraid of how that, you know, what would happen if you tell. I always say one thing, you know, it's kind of like taking the risks that I've taken all through my life. Sometimes we are too scared to take risks, even to go to a new place, to start a new job, to get into a relationship, because we think, what if it doesn't work? But if you lean so much on the negative of what if it doesn't work, then you may never take any risks, you may never make any move, and that means you may never grow in your life. And for me, I'm only living the life I'm living because my life has been a series of risks that I have taken, calculated risks. After I've spoken with God and I feel there's a peace that comes when you're ready to take a risk and you know that it's confirmed by the person who put that dream or desire in you. And that's the only way I've been able to take the risks that I've taken. We're always looking up to, you know, for an opportunity to do something. And sometimes an opportunity presents itself, but sometimes we're probably too scared because we think, who has ever done that? I've never seen anybody do that. What will people think? What will people say? How will I then relate with the people around me? You know, and I think even telling a story is a way of creating a legacy. Because when you tell, you empower other people, you touch a life, you encourage a life, you inspire a life to find the courage. And I had to pray to God to bring me to that place because I believed that what I had gone through was a testimony that could probably liberate somebody. I told my story not so that I can expose anybody, not so that I can make myself feel good or make anybody feel bad, but I told my story because it's mine. I own it. And I think that's where it comes, that's where the rubber really meets the road, is the story you're telling. Is it real? And if it is real, then what's stopping you from telling? I think we live in a world where we are so concerned about what anybody else will think about what you say. So we end up, in a way, living a life that is so controlled by the masses that they don't mean well for us anyway. When we read stories of people who have been very authentic and they'll be very candid about the experiences, some experiences that have been very shameful, even like mine, and I realized that, again, when God has liberated you, if you believe God has liberated you, then why do you want to carry the shame of your past? You're not your past, and everybody really has a past. Some may be flashier than others, others very despicable and ugly and really not worth sharing or not worth associating with. But it is part of you. It doesn't matter how ugly it was. Just like for me, it doesn't matter how ugly, how painful, how shameful and all. It is part of what has made me who I am today. I believe God delivered me from all that. And so by my sharing, it's so that I can encourage other people. Every time I deal with a client, they come to me and they're dealing with things, and then they look at me, because before my story, they look at me and they just see this happy, healthy, very strong, very confident woman. They think I've always been that. They think I grew up that way. There are so many that don't even know or didn't know my history until I went public with my story. And again, I say it has taken the hand of God and the courage and the grace of God to share. And let me just say this. I have forgiven everybody that has hurt me in the past, because I still believe even with that hurt, God had a plan that was bigger than the hurt. Had a plan that was greater than the pain that they put me through. Maybe they didn't know any better. Maybe they did. I don't know. Only they and their God know. What I know is I am grateful to God that I've been able to overcome that and to keep pushing, all the while hiding that shame and carrying a shame that was never mine to begin with. And so many people are carrying a shame that was inflicted on them, that was put on them. And even though you're a victim, you still feel like you're the one carrying that shame. And it's a very, very hard place to be. And it only takes the grace of God. I don't believe anybody can pick themselves from that. And the grace of God sometimes will come through watching and hearing other people's stories who have overcome probably worse situation than yours, or exactly what you've gone through or what you're going through, so that you can recognize or you can realize that I too can pick myself up. I could tell my story when the time comes that you don't have to tell your story because you've had somebody, because obviously I've been watching stories for years. And I remember I think it was 2006. The first time I felt like I really wanted to tell a story was 2006. And I remember calling home while I was still in Dallas, and I called my grandma and I said, "Grandma, you know, I have a desire to write a book." She didn't know what the book would be all about. And I remember I had shared with a couple close friends, and one of them discouraged me from doing it. I would have written my book a long time ago, but one of them discouraged me, and they said, "How will it look like? You know, have you thought about how that will affect the picture or the image of the family? Don't you think that would be very embarrassing to the family? Don't you think that would be exposing the family?" If you notice this, it's about the family. It's about the other people, but it's not about you. So it's like when someone is telling you that, they don't seem to look at or care about how it affects you, to keep it, you know, covered. It's like if you have a bug biting you, if you have, let's just say, a flea or something, if you've ever been bitten by a flea, or imagine just an insect biting you underneath your clothes, you can't settle. It's biting you, right? But you want to, let's say a bee, like you being stung by a bee and it's inside your clothes. You know, you would lose all caution about how naked you might look, and you will strip to remove that bee, because if it stings you and it leaves that sting there, it's venom. There's venom, and you could die. And so you wouldn't even think about who's around me. You will strip, you will unzip if you have to, and you will remove that. So that's, in a way, what I needed to do, because I felt like I've lived with a bee for a very long time. And that time, I thank God for Grandma, because she blessed that. If you have a story to tell, you have a book to write, I hope I will live long enough to read that book. But because of the many voices that you tend to listen to, I put that in the back burner and I shelved it. In 2009, I felt the urge to tell my story, and actually to create my own platform where I could tell my story. I didn't even know how I was going to do that. I had no camera experiences, nothing, but I was just ready to sit in front of a camera and just tell a story and throw it out there. I didn't know where to throw it. I didn't even have a YouTube channel. I just felt there was an urge for me to tell my story. And again, my main reason to tell is because I was already thriving. It wasn't like I was trying to tell a story so that I can have people feel sorry for me or help me. I mean, God has helped me and He's lifted me. I felt like I was getting to that place where I don't have to fear the outside world. I don't have to fear what anybody thinks or says, because my intention is not to victimize anybody. My intention is not to malign anybody. My intention is to tell my story. And if you happen to be a character in my story, then by all means, you will appear there. If you notice, I wouldn't call anyone's names, because I'm not there to victimize anybody. I would mention the relationships and the places and the time zones and all that, because those were the seasons that I went through before God elevated me to where I am today. And I still believe I'm a work in progress. And I want to leave a legacy through this mouth. The words that I share, my stories, my experiences, the risks that I've taken, the failures. You know, I'm yet to share my stories about some of the failures that I've had and how I picked myself out of those failures. Because someone asked there, why is it that she just talks about how people did this to her, did that to her? Is it that she's a super, like a perfect person? I am not perfect by any means, and nobody is perfect. Nobody is. But I'm sharing the experiences that I went through that sharpened me and refined me, and only because I refused to let go of the only hope that I could hold on to, though invisible, but internally I knew there was one that I held on to because He held on to me, and I knew when you hold on to God, God never lets us go. But when we decide to let go of Him, He just sits and waits. But when you run your race and you realize, oh, I'm stumbling way too many times, you go back to God. He's always there, waiting to help. So I remember in 2001, which if you've watched the previous videos, you remember that was a year that I was at my very lowest, even without the most basics in my house. And I started, at that time, I questioned my move. Even though going to the States, I still believe God and allowed me to get that visa so easily. Then I get there and get so flat broke and struggling in a foreign country, and I'm thinking, did I make the wrong decision? And I remembered a song, an old song by a lady called Kathy Trocoli, and it says, "In God's time." I have walked so fast and I stumbled many times along the way until I look back and I decided this time it's going to be God's time. I was so quick to judge. I questioned God enough. And you know, as those words were replaying, it's a song I had heard when I was a young teenager, and I don't even know, I couldn't remember where I heard it from, but those words had stung, you know, they had stuck in my mind, and I went back to those words, and I went looking for that CD. It was an old CD, so it was hard to find. So I found it in a pawn shop, in a pawn shop where people just pawn old stuff to get money, and when they cannot pay, that stuff is attached. I found that one CD. I couldn't find it in any music store, and I was so glad. I played that CD over and over and over, and I was convinced that even though at the time I was at my lowest, it was still within God's plan. It was still within His plan to see how much can I still hold on to Him? How much can I trust Him to bring me to the mountains, and to also lift me when I'm in the valleys? Because if you only want to complain when you're down in the valley when it's so hot, how will you even enjoy the breeze? Will you even recognize the breeze when you're up in the mountain? So I felt like at that time God was allowing me or calling me to persevere the heat in the valley, trusting him for the breeze that he is about to bring me into. And so that was that. So fast forward again, 2009, when I thought about telling my story, I shared with a few friends. They were not even Christian believers, but they believed that I had a story to tell, and they encouraged me to tell. But then again, those words of the other friend replayed that, how will it sit in the community? You know, this is not an African thing. This is not, you know, in Africa, we don't tell stories that are so candid because that exposes a family, that exposes it. So again, I shelved that. So remember, I'd shelved a book. Now I've shelved a story that I was going to tell on video. And so that stayed. And fast forward, when I lost my mom in 2017, 2018, as I was recovering from my surgery, those thoughts started coming back to me. And I felt like I don't think my mother's story, my mother's life should just go like that. I think people need to know the truth behind her real story when she was, you know, vibrant and healthy, and how her health went down and how she died, and how that affected me and how that journey was for me, because again, I am part of that journey. And so I started drafting a book about my mother's life. I had no clue that in just a few months, I would lose my grandmother, who, to me, she was like the only person that I had known all my life. If you remember my stories in the previous videos, I had grown up under my grandmother. So I knew my grandmother more than I knew my mother. So that was the one person when I knew to recognize anybody, that was the first person and the only person that I know that I recognized from the time I opened my eyes to recognize anybody until she died. So I never thought she would die. I don't know how to put that. I knew we are all mortal people, but I never thought grandma can die. How would life be without her? So in being concerned about our well-being and my recovery and grieving my mother and everything, that book went to the shelves. I mean, everything was just sitting in the shelves. When I lost my grandmother, and as I shared, no one told me in my family that my grandma had passed away. I thought, okay, why do I have to care so much about people when they don't even care about me? Why is it always been about how will it come across to so-and-so, how will it come across, how will it affect the image of the family? Why am I so concerned about that? What about me? There's an actor, a British actor, I forget the name, but I had watched his stories, and I remember him telling his stories of how he even ended up in acting and all that. A lot of very embarrassing moments of how he lost his dignity, he lost his wife, he lost $1 million. He said he was even fired by Simon Cowell. I mean, some very embarrassing experiences. But he said he had to tell it because it's his story. And one thing he said that was very profound is, we all have a story, which I agree. And if you don't tell your story, somebody else will. And he was determined to tell his story so that when he is gone, when people go searching for him, they can find his story firsthand, told by himself. He said when people die, especially famous people, people don't go to look at how much these people had, you know, how much was in their account, what business did they have. They want the autobiography. They want the biography of that person, because that's the most personal they can get to that person, and they get to really know the insight of that person's lives. So I felt like, so telling my story is not just about other people. I am the main subject in this story. I'm the main character in this story. And so I'm going to tell my story. And there is no story without characters. There's no story that is a one person. It's like watching a movie where there's just one character, right? You can't watch a movie with just one character. So unfortunately, there were characters in my life, some some who brought me some pleasant experiences, some not very pleasant. And so I had to tell those experiences. And so that's why I told my story. And for those who have been inspired, I want to encourage you to find the courage to liberate yourself. It's very liberating to tell your story. But before you do that, ask for grace, because only God can protect you. Only God can hold you and shield you from the attacks of the enemy, because the enemy is there, and the enemy never wants the truth to come out. The enemy will not want the truth to come out, even about the good that God has done for you, because it embarrasses him, it ashames him. He wants to hold you captive, thinking the people you're protecting are your friend. They're not. They're not. So just go out there and tell, what's the worst that can happen? I go to that point and I said, what's the worst that can happen? When my grandma passed away, it was 2019, and I was out in the States, and when that started replaying, like, it's time to tell my story, I said, after all, I have nothing much else left to lose. I've lost my grandma. I've lost my mother. I've lost basically my family relations, because I don't feel like anybody cares about me anymore. And why is it about people? I felt like it's time for me to tell my story. It's time for me to tell my story involving those two women and the relationship that I had with them, and the role they played in my life. Because really, without the foundation they had given me, I don't think I would have overcome the things that I overcame. Even though some of the things that I overcame as a younger girl, I wouldn't say I was mature enough even spiritually to overcome those things. I think it's by default that God overcame for me. I cannot say I overcame, because in our society, you couldn't tell anybody anything embarrassing, especially if it involved an adult. So that part, I would say, God won that fight, and he covered me and he protected me so that I could grow into the person that I have grown into as an adult, because I believe he had a bigger plan for my life. Even though I may not have looked like there was anything going for me, especially anybody looking at my background, my childhood, probably they never expected that I would ever become anybody. I'm still a work in progress. God is still working in me, and I believe he has great things that he wants to do in my life, but he will not do if I stay in that cage of shame, if I stay caged in that cage of fear, of worrying about what other people will say. It's an opinion. Everybody has an opinion about everything. But my goal was to help somebody else be liberated. I had no clue how far this would travel. And the last 3 weeks since we shared my story, have been overwhelmed by feedback from over 15 countries. Many of them will say they don't know how it ended up on their feed, but they watched anyway, and they have watched and they have shared, and others have said, I've shared with my daughters. I wish they would meet you. I mean, there are people who I may never meet because they're all over this world. But God is not limited by distance. Maybe that's where he's going to send me next. I don't know. I would just say I'm just a yielded vessel. Wherever he would send me, whoever he would send to me, I would just say he speaks through me so that I may find the right words to encourage those that are dealing with situations that they feel they're too embarrassing to share. Another song that came to me, I love songs and I love quotes. And a song that came to my heart back in the day, when 2004, when I started toying with the idea of starting Twinkle Little Stars, the charity organization in the States, it's a song that just came and I was like, okay, I don't have money. How do I go? I am the least. How do I go start anything? You know, I had, you know, those memories that replay in your mind about your childhood and things, and you feel like, I don't think I'm the right person. But it was very clear God was speaking into my life about going to start something, a platform to help the young children to dream themselves out of their compromised environments, whether they are compromised because they've been violated, molested, abused, or they are just poor, or they've been ridiculed. But all those negatives, they could dream themselves out of that and pick themselves out, just like I had. And so this song that came, it just said, here I stand. And I'm like, okay, then what? So a song just came and it was birthed in my heart, and I started writing the chorus. And in 3 days, I had written a song that has never left my mind from 2004. That's 20 years ago, actually. This July will be 20 years ago. And for a song to sit in my heart like that just came and was born from within me, and was born from within my desire to do what I needed to do, I believe what I have done, or what I did then, and that I've continued to do, to speak up candidly, has been what God called me to do. And it just said, the chorus said, Here I stand, without a plea to call my own. Here I stand now, use me just as I am, Lord, as a vessel yielded to you. Use me, send me, and direct me, as a vessel yielded to you. Use me, send me, and direct me as I stand. And so the stanzas, you know, those are different. But I felt like I was standing just as I am, as a vessel, really yielded to God. Just use me as I am, as I stand. And every time I go and I feel like the situation I'm being called to speak, maybe this is a little too big. I don't feel like I have what it takes to speak to this, you know, congregation or this group of elites. That song has come back to me. As a vessel yielded to you, I stand. Just send me, use me, and direct me as I stand. Last year, when I was called to speak to almost 2,000 head teachers, I mean, those are people that, you know, they run institutions, 2,000. What do you got to tell them? You know, I've never been a teacher. I've never, you know, worked in a structure, like a structured learning institution. But somebody heard me speak somewhere, and they decided you're the one that will speak at this, it was their 7th conference, annual conference. And I said, oh, wow, okay. And so I said, God, okay, as a vessel yielded to you, I will. And I think when I look back, most of what has brought me to where I am, even to be a life coach, to be a speaker, has been the experiences that I've picked up along the way. The good and the bad, I don't throw any. I pick them, I blend them, and I make that mix that creates the stories and the lessons that I share as I go. I love what Ralph Waldo Emerson said. He said, don't go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. For me to tell my story so candidly, I had never known a close friend or a family member that has ever told their story. But some of them have shared their stories with me. But when I tell them, can we talk about this candidly, openly? No, everybody now shrinks into their shell. And I felt, you know, maybe if I break my shell and break out and tell my story, it will probably enable them or give them the courage to tell theirs. Because there are so many people that I still believe, and I know they are bound in their experiences, and they have allowed those to define them, to define who they are, to put a roadblock to how far they can go. So they feel like I can't go past this because someone might puncture my tires and I might not, you know, that just might abort my trip. But you must believe beyond that and beyond a shadow of doubt that the God who called you, the God who is wanting to speak through you, is ready to protect you from all those spikes that you see ahead of you so that you can share your story and liberate yourself. Really, I think there's so much that people can enjoy when they're liberated. And I really hope that whoever sees this again and goes back to watch what we've shared before will be liberated, will be encouraged and inspired to share their story, will be liberated to take the risk, whatever that is. You must take a risk if you want to get to the next place that you want to go to. You must take a risk and remove whatever it is that's standing in front of you. Whoever it is that's standing in front of you, you must take a risk to overcome them, to overpower them, not in your own might, but in the might of the Almighty God. Sometimes we are afraid to put out something out there because we think there'll be a lot of retaliation, and can we handle it? Unfortunately, we have no control of how people respond or react to what you say or what you do. In this world, you can never be good enough to everybody. And even your goodness will be viewed as bad to some people. Some people will see your kindness, or they'll take it with a lot of skepticism, or think that, what is he up to? When you do something like to tell your story or share your testimony candidly, yes, you will be marginalized. You're bound to be isolated even more by those, especially those in your closest circles, your closest friends, because they haven't talked to me. Not a friend, a close friend, has reached out to me. Not one that has reached out after sharing. I've seen some of them forward, even on Facebook, and tag others. FYI, or just tag and send. And so, again, I'm not going to be bothered by that because I cannot control how anybody perceives or receives this. All I can control is how I react to that, how I relate to the world around me, the friends, the family, neighbors, whoever, because it's all over the place. I've been called by people who have seen me, who've met me once. And most of the feedback has been positive to me because it has been positive in the sense that they have been very encouraged. Most recently, somebody who called me was very close to my mother, very close personal friend who worked with her, and a personal friend of my mother who tells me she came to the funeral. And she told me that she spoke to this condition of my mother and the conditions that she lived in. And she's actually asked if we can have lunch. She would like to talk to me. And she feels like that needed to be shared. Because you see, she is aware. She experienced that. But could she share about it? She couldn't. And anyway, by virtue of her being a friend, she probably wouldn't feel like she has a right to share something like that, or the freedom to share that. And she said that she watched it the first time, and she cried. By the time she was going to bed, she was broken because she says, Sarah, my mom, was like an elder sister to her. She looked up to her. My mother was full of life. And those who lived with her, worked with her and all that, loved my mother. She had a beautiful spirit. And so when this lady when she saw this video, and then she remembered how she had seen my mother when she lastly went to see her, and the fact that she ultimately died and came and buried, and now she's seeing this, she says it evoked all kinds of emotions, and it made me miss my friend. It made me feel really sad and all. And so she went back to work the next day, and it took her a week for her to gather the courage to call me, to talk to me without her crying. And so to see even someone like that, feel that, connect with that, she probably would never have connected with her emotions as regards my mom had this not happened. And she mentioned two others that, they've talked, and they're also like everybody. They were sad. They were sad to see the plight of my mother and to see how she went down. This is a conversation that would never have been happening, even among my mom's friends, had this not gone out there. When you look at Isaiah 54:17, it says, no weapons formed against me will prosper. We read the Bible a lot, but we don't apply it much. We read, we preach, we encourage others. When they're the ones in a situation, when they're the ones in fire, we encourage them. But when we're in fire, can we still call and invoke the same word of God into our own lives, into our own situations? That's what I've had to do. I've had to encourage myself because I've not had a close friend encourage me, especially around here. I have not had a family member encourage me, but I've had a lot of encouragement from the world, people who don't even know me, who have been encouraged by my story, so in turn they've encouraged me and say, it's so good that you shared this. I feel I have the courage to face my demons, to face the fears, to face all the giants that are in my life. And so even though the ones that are immediately related to me, whether by friendship or by blood or by relationship, even though they have not encouraged me, maybe they feel like I shouldn't have done it, you cannot take it back. And like I said, I have no regrets. But the fact that I've had the encouragement from other people, and not just the encouragement, what encourages me the most is to see that those people are being liberated. To see them being liberated, to see that there's someone they can connect with, even though we're in so many different, like we're in different countries, so many miles apart. But what does that tell you? That the world is dealing with the same problems. That the world, as long as they're human beings, they're dealing with the same experiences. Some have been neglected and rejected by their own mothers. Some have been defiled by their own fathers or their mother's boyfriends or husbands who are not their biological parents. I mean, there's so much pain in the world. And I feel like when I see that, I feel like it's a mission accomplished. And again, I will not fear weapons that come from the devil, because the devil and God are both powerful. But I choose to look up to God. I choose to hold on to God and the power that he has. Because even though we know the devil will fight us, God always knows, and he always knew that the devil will fight us. And by the time you go out to do something good, even a kind deed, you will be beaten for it. Look at Jesus, the Son of God. He was sinless, but he was still killed. And people still found things to put on him. People found maligning or malicious things to say and to put on him. I don't know what that means as far as my life is concerned at this point. But I would say this: I find comfort in knowing I found friends and sisters in the world who share in my pain, who share in my journey. In fact, as we speak, there has been feedback from women, especially from Kenya, that have been disinherited by their own brothers, have been disinherited by their own uncles. They have been rendered homeless by their own siblings, because by virtue of them being girls, and especially being out of the country, they don't even know where to go if they come back home. Some of them haven't been able to come back home because of that. Why do we want to allow something like that to continue taking root, where, you know, people are afraid to come back home, or people are afraid, or people feel like they have no value or they are not valid in their country anymore because they were born girls, especially? So now, you know, this and many other platforms is allowing many other women to share their misfortunes or their experiences. Now, they've never felt like they can share with anybody, but now they feel they can share with me because I've taken off my mask. And so behind all this smile that you see, behind all this strength that you see, and I believe God really even leading me to the path of becoming a life coach and a mentor to young children, behind all that was a broken heart. But I believe now, by sharing this, I'm even now on my way to recovery more than I was before. I've always been on a path to recovery. But after sharing this, now I'm more, like I've made a progress, a huge milestone towards my recovery. And I pray that I may continue to share my life and my experience very candidly to enable others, you know, to take off their masks, to share their stories, because nobody is perfect. Nobody is perfect. And the experiences that we've gone through are the ones that shape us and make us, especially those that you went through when you're most vulnerable, when you had no voice. Those are the ones that, as you grow up, as you continue to, you know, force yourself through and purge all those obstacles, it gives you a voice. And when you have that voice, you better make sure it's hard, because you didn't go through what you went through for yourself. You went through what you went through for people that you may never even meet. I just thank God for that opportunity, and I thank him for the courage that he's given me. And I encourage people to find a way to cultivate peace. And if there is any, if there's been any issue, stop burying it under the rug in the name of protecting a family image, in the name of protecting a family name, in the name of protecting so-and-so and so-and-so, when the ones that are being oppressed are the voiceless, the least among you. Stop covering, stop hiding things under the rug. I mean, that we may be able to live as a community, as a society, as a family, and truly cultivate the love that I believe God dreamt when he created the family unit. Many families are living a lie. Many families are living a lie. Because I meet some of the feedbacks and people have inboxed me and they'll be like, I cannot talk, I can't see eye to eye with my sister. This morning, I woke up to a message from this young lady from Zimbabwe, but she lives in South Africa, and she just recently lost her mother, but she can't see eye to eye with her sister, our only sibling. So her world is so broken. Now she says, I feel like I found a sister in me. Last week, no, 2 weeks ago, this lady in the States, she was in about the same exact circumstances as mine. And she had just lost a mother. And she came across my story and she was wondering, I'm buying a ticket to come home and bury my mother, but I don't know what to expect. Imagine, but she has to come to bury the mother. But because of the wrangles in the family, she's so afraid. She's so afraid of what to expect when she comes to bury the mother. Imagine there's already the pain of losing your mother, and there's a pain of the fear that has been inflicted on you by the family. You don't know how things are going to go. You know, so I flagged that, and I need to follow up on her and see how did it go. I mean, if I was able to, I would have gone with her to even bury the mother. You know, it's hard. It's hard. People are walking through very, very tough journeys in the family, but we're covering up in the name of family. But yet, you only want to look like family out there, but when you go back home, there is no family. There is no relationship. In fact, after an event, everybody goes home their own way. One could drive while the sister is walking or taking a bus. Or a sister could drive when the brother or the uncle or the auntie is taking a bus. Because there is no love, there is no unity, there is no relationship. We just want to put up a show. We want to put up a show because we're in front of the church leading. But in real sense, what are you doing leading in church? If you don't want to see your blood brother, you don't want to see your blood sister, you don't want to see your own mother, you don't want to see your uncle, you can't stand seeing them. What are we doing? I mean, I think it's time people found a way to live in real love. And you can only recultivate that by accepting, okay, if I come to you and I tell you you've offended me, don't be too proud to accept that, because I've been less than you. You've violated me. I've come and told you. I want us to make peace, right? To resolve that, so that if you did that unknowingly, then you will face it and say, oh, I didn't realize that my actions came across that way. And if you knew you did that, then come and tell me why you did it, and can we work things up? You know, but if I tell you and now you want to, instead of making things right, you want to make it worse by shutting me, hashing me, and then you get everybody around you rallying, you know, behind you, so you have the army and I have none. You know, I want to end up with this. It's true, unfortunately, in our culture especially, girls are not very popular, and unfortunately, even mothers, women in that sense, don't seem to protect the rights of the girls. They don't seem to give their girls a voice. They see the woman, you know, oppressed and shut down and put down, and then they take more dirt and they heap her on her and continue to silence her. Like Maya Angelou said, however much dirt you heap on me, still I rise. It's not a prideful statement. It's a statement of power, believing that there's something inside of me that will always give me the power and the strength to rise up. And even though, you know, when you're victimized and when you go through some of the experiences, is when you're at your least, especially in the family, God will raise you. He will raise you. He will raise you up. Even though the family may perceive you as the least, you didn't choose to be born where you were born, how you were born, and go through the childhood you went through and the misfortunes and everything. But just like he did with Gideon, I believe he's going to do with me, and he's going to do with many others that are coming out and telling their stories, really to find a voice and to give others a voice, and to find the courage and to find the ground, a solid, firm, solid ground to stand on and live the life that they were promised. Gideon, when he was sent to go fight the Midianites, he thought, you know, the angel of the Lord came and talked to him. And Gideon was there thinking, me? I can't. I'm the least, and I'm from the least of the clans, of the tribes. I cannot. What did God say? Go in the strength that I've given you. When I was praying to do this, because I love that message of Gideon, I think I first heard it like in that perspective, and I heard it and it had a totally different meaning. That I personalized Gideon's life and experiences. I personalized that about 10 years ago, no, about 12 years ago. And so when it came to this, I said, God, as you are with Gideon, I believe you will be with me. And when the time is right, give me that peace. And so that peace, when it came to my heart, I went forth knowing that I'm not alone. I may not have all this army physically, but I have a greater army than all this. You know, and that's why even before my mom died, when she was alive, when she was sane, when she was losing her mind, even when she lost the words of the old hymn, It Is Well, it was always our favorite hymn. And I always love to sing that song. I don't see that as a funeral song. I see it more as a song of helping me make peace with whatever the circumstance. It's not just death. It is well with my soul. Where does it say, when peace like a river attendeth my soul? Peace that attendeth my soul. Whatever my lot may be, thou hast taught me to know it is well with my soul. So it is well, even now after sharing my story, because there's a peace that attendeth my soul. And it did, and it does, and it continues to attend to my soul. I have been able to sleep well because I know it is well. When it's in God's hands, it is well. And I pray that peace may prevail in my family and beyond, in the world. I pray that it may prevail in families and that people may truly learn to come together and resolve issues and not trivialize anyone's experiences, not trivialize anyone's complaint just because a boy is 4 years old or a girl is 5 years old. Don't trivialize what they come and share. Don't trivialize what they've experienced. Don't victimize them. Don't just victimize them when they're already a victim. I really would encourage parents to give audience to their children. I would encourage parents to give audience to their daughters. I would encourage elders to give audience to young people that have been placed under their leadership or their custody. Because when we just say, oh, she's just a child, or, you know, you don't take it seriously, you trivialize that child's experience. You expel the trust that they have in you. And basically, you give away the power that God has already given you over that child. So be there to lift their hand, be there to listen to them, and validate their concerns. Validate their concerns. They are human beings first before they are children. They are human beings. Many times in the world we live in, we want to put ourselves first. I want to project my needs first, you know, before the other person. And unfortunately, I feel like it has bred a selfish society. It doesn't matter what I have to do. I'll jump through the hoops to make sure that Justus doesn't get through this. I'll jump through the hoops to make sure Justus doesn't get what is rightfully his. Even if it's a job, even if it's anything in the family, a right in the family. Even something as simple as you want, for example, you want to probably, let's say even buy property. I've seen people who have corrupted that whole process to where they corrupt it with whoever is selling and whoever is brokering between, where they end up making people not able to own property that really want to own property. They want to do it the right way, but it's compromised like that because there are people with their malicious intentions. Or if I'm the agent and I know you want to buy this and I cannot afford it or I haven't been able to buy my own, I'll make sure I do whatever I can to cut that tie. And maybe I was the only link between you and the seller. When we think about, you know, where it says people should consider, not look out for their own good, but the good of their neighbor. Who is your neighbor? Who's your neighbor? Is anybody around you? And so whatever you do, think about it. How is it impacting this neighbor? If it's your mother, if it's your father, if it's your brother, your sister, your child, your actual neighbor, your colleague at work, a stranger you found on the road, or somebody that you met that is hungry, that's your neighbor. Maybe you're carrying groceries in the car. You're carrying groceries for the next 1 month for your family. And you found somebody by the roadside. Just because they're in tattered clothes and they look homeless and you can't even stop just to even say hello, give them a smile. Maybe you can give them a loaf of bread and maybe a pack of milk or something. But how many people do that? How many times do we do that? Because we are too caught up in our selfishness and what is good for me, for me, for me, for me. And I want to just do what benefits me, and my immediate family. And I think that is a cancer that has spread into families, into the communities, into society, into the world, that is killing us. Whether it's in the religious realm, or it's in the political realm, or it's in the business realm, whatever it is, it's like we have become so self-consumed. We are so immersed in our selfish desires that we don't care how that rubs off on the other person. Whether, if it means I cut your neck so that I get to that next job or that business or that property or whatever, it's like we don't really care. And it has become a bleeding world, I feel like. We live in a world that is constantly bleeding. And, you know, I'm so glad that I found the courage to share my story. I have found that so many people seem to be finding, again, a ground to stand up again. Those that have been buried, shake their dust off and stand up again and be counted. And I'm looking at what God wants to do with this again, just like the song. Here I stand, use me, send me, and direct me as I stand. I have no plea to call my own, but God knows how He's going to use my story, how He's going to use my life, what is left of it, how He's going to use me and my mouth for His glory, to help my neighbor, to help somebody. And I pray that whoever may have watched the story and maybe probably has been judgmental or is thinking, how can I approach her? I pray they can find the courage and just come and talk to me. Whether our paths have crossed in the path or not, just come talk to me. I'm not here to shoot anybody. I'm here to really liberate the world. And looking at that, I'm believing this is a season that God has brought me into. I believe He's preserved me and allowed me to see the world for such a time as this. Like I said earlier, I believe the whole world, we are all human beings, and human beings are dealing with human issues. Not tribal issues, not nationality issues, not racial issues, human issues. So whether your human issue, whatever you are, boils down to a racial issue, or maybe for you it boils down to a tribal issue, or to a nationality issue, or to a religious issue, or political, whatever your issue is, I believe this whole thing is to liberate and encourage and inspire people to confront their issues. And those that are in authority, whether it's in the family, church, in the government, or whatever, to really give audience to those people that need an outlet, that need to be heard, and give back the power to those that God has given. God did not create anybody to be powerless, did not create anybody to be a subject of someone else's oppression. And so why do we want to create that? Why do we want to break the society by using our positions of authority instead of inspiring and encouraging and motivating or empowering? We're using that to oppress and to put down and to kill potential, especially for women and young girls. I believe this came at a time as a message to the world, because going back to the feedback that has been coming from sharing the previous story, I believe this has come at a season where God is saying it's time for the world to arise and shine. I hear that a lot. You know, every new year, most churches will preach all over the world. It's time to arise and shine, arise and shine, arise and shine. Yes, but do we truly arise and shine? Or are we allowing those below us to arise and shine? Or are we shutting their light before they could even start to arise? Are we dimming their candle before it can, you know, get up and go out and light the darkness in their world? Because there's so much darkness in the world, and I believe when you allow someone's flickering flame to come out and help shield it so it doesn't lose its flame before it does its work, we allow them to carry that candle and go. Can you imagine how much good would be in the world if everybody was allowed to carry their candle and go light their world wherever they are, instead of putting it out? In the retrospect, I would like to say, I believe this whole thing, from where it was born and to where it has been birthed. This is June. This is my month, my birthday month. And I feel like a new person, actually. I celebrated this birthday with a lot of freedom and feeling light and liberated because I don't have to carry my baggage one more year. And I've been asking God as I do some introspection, I'm asking God, what now do you want? Okay, I shared. What next? What do I do with what I already put out there? What do I do about the feedback that is coming back? Because I didn't know what to expect. And I feel like the Spirit of God is saying there's a lot of this needed in the world. And even though I may be in Kenya, I've asked God to use me wherever He wants to use me, to send me wherever. And not just to speak to the Kenyan audience, not just speak to a particular audience, but again to speak to the audience of human beings. I have seen feedback from people, especially living in diaspora. And let me speak specifically to people that are living in the diaspora, especially of the United States of America, because that's where I've been. And there are people that are living there that have been struggling. They want to relocate back to Africa. But because of how they left home and where they are and the difference in the culture, and then some of these underlying issues among or within the families, so many of them don't know how to come back home. They have not even known how to share some of the issues that they're dealing with between America and Kenya or wherever it is in the world. But if they're living in the States, for example, they have family members back home who look up to them for support. And it's okay, because when you go out there, of course, everybody expects you to be up there, to be able to do better and to send some help back home. But sometimes we just see the material relationship. And that has become, it seems like it's consistent with many of the conversations that I've had. It's like you're here and the only relationship you have with your relative in America is like, that's like a mobile bank. You want this, they send you. But do you care about their future? Do you care about their retirement? Do you care about their life after America? Then what? What if they want to come back home? What if they wanted to come back and settle and do business or come and build and maybe raise their family here? Or they just want to retire back home? Do you care about that? Or are you just draining them? Are you just puncturing their balloon and the air is all coming out, and then by the time they're of age and they would want to relocate, they're empty? Because that's how people feel. And unfortunately, they don't know how to confront their family members at home to tell them, hey, I also have needs and all this. Because when they try to say that, then they're viewed as mean. I've been on both sides. I've lived on both sides. And it's very frustrating. And because those are people who also need an outlet and a platform to share. Maybe I've been thinking, maybe it's time to create a platform to educate both sides of the divide. Maybe people that live abroad and their families back home, wherever home is, immigrants especially, so that they can share their experiences and they can probably enlighten their families back home or friends, Anybody, even your neighbor becomes a cousin once you fly. Everybody becomes your cousin or your mom's cousin or your uncle, people you never knew. The moment you start making it, then you have all these relatives that you never knew you had. And the neighbors look. And then when you don't give, because you can only give so much, when you don't give, it's not taken very well. And I have seen that frustration, and I can relate. So I think it's time. The world needs a platform that where they can share to educate and also to liberate people from the bondages of selfishness. And entitlement. I think that is a killer in our society. It's a killer within the family. It's a killer within the nation. It's a killer within the world. It's killing people. And so when people feel entitled, they kill those they feel entitled to get from. Because those ones, even though they're working, but they're really just shells, because they don't have a voice to tell you, I cannot or I may not be able to support you in this sense or in this project or this, because I'm also working towards this. And so I think we need to create something that can probably soften the grounds, especially for the diaspora, so that they can use that in a non-threatening, on a non-threatening platform that is shared across the board, so that as people get to see, people that expect, they get to know, oh, so it's not just our sister, it's not just our uncle, it's not just our brother or our cousin that doesn't want to do this. So, oh, this is a reality. There's a lot of reality on the ground out in America that people don't know about. Of course, the greatest nation in the world, it has had fame since time immemorial. It's an old nation. It's been there. They've made their wealth. They've made their name. And yes, there's a lot of wealth in America, but there's also a lot of poverty. And there's a lot of hardship, especially for foreigners. And so families need to understand and have some grace, show some grace to their family members and relatives that have crossed the Atlantic to the other side. So I hope that by sharing, and so I believe this is going to be ushering us into a new platform where we can create, where we can hear from both sides. And it would really be a learning experience for everybody that shares and that watches and views, because then it liberates the ones in diaspora and liberates the families at home. And I feel like it's going to bring a family bond or bridge a family gap that is probably widening, with the risk of some people never being able to come back home. I just believe, and I hope, again, by sharing, there's power, a lot of power in sharing. And I hope that by doing that, it will continue to enrich people and to open up people. And even the ones that are feeling stuck in their countries, maybe they'll get to know the opportunities out there and how, the right way to get there. Not just corners, but which is the right way to get there. How can I get there? If I got there, what can I do to make my life better? And what can I go, when I go there, what can I do to make that place better? It's kind of like the Scouts movement. It's like, wherever you go, leave it better than you found it. And so since through sharing my story has been a part of my growth, it has contributed to my personal growth, career, social, spiritual, and emotional, even mental growth. And it's given me a sense of calm and assurance. I look forward to an opportunity to share your experiences and to learn from experiences that go beyond this platform, shared moments with Justus. We hope to see you on the other side as we embark on our newest baby, Shared Moments America, that will bring America and the rest of the world together, where they can collaborate and share stories that inspire, that liberate, empower, and encourage people to get up and live the lives that they are created to live. Because I believe wherever you are made, whatever your circumstances, you are made to thrive and not survive.